real pleasure to be with you here this morning, just to share a little bit about, I guess, how we've started in our climate journey, to tell you a little bit about the things that we've done that have worked for us, and hopefully give you some ideas that you can leverage to use in your own climate transition journeys. And I guess for me, that's a really important point that I want to make at the start of this. We very much feel like we are on a journey. We very much feel like we are still learning, developing, challenging ourselves to get better in this area. And that is the thing about climate change. You need to expect this to take time, to take effort, to take thought, and to take commitment. And that's something that we learned very early on. And I would suggest to anybody in the room today who's just thinking about starting off your climate change journey, a really great perspective here is that big ambitions can start with really simple steps. So with that in mind, what did we do? How did we approach it? Well, what I want to talk to you today is how we look at things through three lenses. And the first lens for us was the lens of looking in. So for us, the obvious first step in our climate journey was to really think about the type of business we were, the type of business that we wanted to be, and that prompted us to ask ourselves a range of questions. So how do we play our part in addressing climate change? Do we understand our current carbon emissions? And Andrew's talked a lot about that. But how do we challenge ourselves to reduce them? What are our short, medium, and long-term goals? And importantly, what elements of our business can we change really quickly? Now, answering that led us to the first of two ambitions that we've set ourselves that really underpin our climate strategy. And that's the ambition to go green ourselves. And pursuing that ambition has led us over the last number of years to implement a number of changes, which range from the very small, very simple, to the slightly larger, more invasive. And we started by simply doing things like investing and replacing all lighting across our branches and premises, using ultra-low LED alternatives. We've made changes to our company car scheme so that this year you can only have hybrid vehicles. From the 1st of January next year, you can only have electric vehicles as part of our scheme. And that allows us to deliver on our ambition to have a net zero fleet by 2025. At present, we're working through a schedule of boiler replacements across all our premises. And our target there is by the end of this year, 80% of our standalone branches will be fossil fuel free. But perhaps one of the biggest early decisions we took, and actually one of the simplest, was to replace our energy with a 100% certified renewable source. And that immediately reduced those Scope 2 emissions that Andrew just talked about down to zero. And that's been incredibly important. Now, that internal focus has been very much part of our climate journey. And again, relatively early on, what we learned there is there's only so much you can achieve on your own. And that's where our second lens of looking around comes into play. As an organization, we've always been very much focused on collaboration, being open to learning from others, identifying best practices, and looking around is all about that. It's about learning from other organizations and individuals, and being open to partnering with other organizations who have shared goals, values, and objectives. So one of the first things we did in this area was to start benchmarking ourselves through the likes of the Northern Ireland Environmental Benchmarking Survey, committing to the Business and Biodiversity Charter, but also challenge ourselves to both retain and improve in the likes of our core accreditation. Building on that, we've committed to the BITC Climate Pledge, which sees us committing to reduce our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% by 2030. And in the last few weeks, we're absolutely delighted to be named the Environmental Leadership Award at this year's Responsible Business Award. But each of those schemes, each of those initiatives have really challenged us to continually look at how we improve our approach and think differently about how we do things. And in that respect, a really key factor for us has been about the engagement and enthusiasm of our employees. So we've set up an internal climate and environment Yammer site, which has been an incredible source of engagement and inspiration from our people. So some of the initiatives coming from that has been the idea to utilise outdoor space at our operations centre in Dunmurry to implement a wildflower garden and a productive garden. And they're both looked after by our staff, and the produce from the productive garden is then used in the staff canteen. And then further that, we've taken that concept outside of the bank, and we've partnered with Eco Schools, where we deliver on their outdoor learning programme, and we've also delivered 11 productive gardens across one for each of the council areas in Northern Ireland this year. And having our staff involved has been that really significant factor in the success of those initiatives to date. But equally and really importantly is the fact that the message that sustainability is a core part of who we are and what we do comes from the very top of the organisation. So from our chief executive, our executive team, right throughout the leadership in the organization, we have a really clear purpose to take our responsibilities in this area really seriously. Our new CEO, Vicky Davis, has spelled out being sustainable and responsible as at the center of her 5 key strategic objectives for this organization. And we have set dedicated climate and environment targets to support that. And it's been that marriage of people and purpose which has been key to delivering on our climate journey so far. But as I said earlier, we are very much on a journey. And while we have enjoyed some successes in both looking in and looking around, we're very conscious that our biggest challenge and the one we're really facing into now is that final lens of looking out. So looking out is about how we engage and interact with our customers to support them in their climate journeys. And that's the heart of our second of our 2 climate ambitions, and that's to help our customers go green. From an emissions perspective and the type of business that we are, our biggest emissions are those Scope 3 emissions relating to our customers. So effectively, every pound that we lend to our customers, the impact it has on carbon emissions. Now, obviously, you're hearing today that climate change is increasingly an important factor across regulatory, government, macroeconomic factors. And obviously, we're hearing increasing calls that we need to do better. The run-up to COP26 is highlighting this, and hopefully we'll see progress beyond that. But in that context, we also think we have to acknowledge that Northern Ireland continues to lag behind from a policy perspective. And yes, there are 2 items of climate legislation going through the Assembly at this stage, but I think it's increasingly apparent that we simply do not have time as businesses to wait for policy or regulatory intervention before we take steps and take action ourselves. If you think about Northern Ireland being a broadly SME economy, feeding very much into local, national and international supply chains, it's increasingly likely, and we're seeing evidence of this, of customers being challenged about their approach to climate change from their customers and from their suppliers. And that in turn raises the question, what the businesses need to do to progress their transition journeys, but also how can banks and businesses partner with each other to accelerate and take the opportunities so that we flourish in the new low-carbon economy. And that's an area we've been working very hard on, and an area in response where we've collaborated with the business community to develop the Climate Action Programme. Now, the Climate Action Programme was born out of that ambition to help a typical SME in Northern Ireland approach and navigate the challenges presented by climate change. And that programme has 4 main objectives. Firstly, it's to understand that business case for climate action through carbon literacy, and Andrew just talked a lot about that. It's about measuring, it's about knowing your carbon footprint, understanding your baseline and how you can take steps forward from there. It's about planning, it's about envisioning your target and what your journey to reach is, because it's really important in this that actually a key part of the programme for us is about thinking about opportunities. There are a huge number of opportunities out there. What new opportunities are there for your business? How can you adapt to those and how can you take advantage of them? And finally, and really importantly, committing to make tangible emissions reductions. Our programme is initially through the BITC Climate Action Pledge, but we see that very much as a step towards full net zero commitments. So this is a programme that's applicable to any business type, of any size in any sector, and really helps to shape awareness, understanding, strategy, and commitments. It incorporates tangible outcomes and importantly supports businesses in developing their climate journeys and driving those forward. So as I wrap up, I started by talking about our climate journey, and if you'd allow me to perhaps stretch that analogy, hopefully not the breaking point, but we are all here today and we're at different stages in our climate journeys. Some of you are very well advanced. Some of you have taken some steps. Some of you are just wanting to start out. But the point is we're all here. We've all got our tickets. And hopefully, after this morning, all motivated to get that journey very much underway. So my challenge to us as I wrap up today is that we treat today as an opportunity to accelerate our collective efforts. So whether that's pushing ahead with the next step of your climate journey, whether it's taking your first steps, we're all now really clear in the destination. Net zero is the target that we need to get to. What we need to do is commit to taking the steps to get that journey all the way and move things forward.